We love a guest appearance as much as any next madly obsessive review channel, and having an actor pop up halfway through an episode that you weren't expecting can sometimes fill us with excitement and joy and all of those fun things. Star Trek has many times in its franchise managed to completely pull the wool over our eyes in this respect. Then there are those times when the episode sort of spoils the surprise a little bit by including the name of that guest star in the opening credits. While yes, there are sometimes contractual reasons they have to be there, perhaps there is an alternate universe where every single name could just be left for the end credits so that we could have pure, unfiltered, and unspoiled surprises. Sometimes what can happen when you know a surprise is coming is that it becomes more of a clock-watching event, that you're ticking down the seconds until they arrive, which can distract from the rest of the episode. That isn't to say that the 10 episodes coming are ruined by the fact that the names were in the credits. It's just, call this a wish list of times I didn't know going in. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 times opening credits spoiled the surprise. Number 10. Jonathan Frakes' Death Wish. By now, there's a running joke that to be considered a real Star Trek show, you have to feature Jonathan Frakes on screen. Think about it, he's been in The Next Generation, he's been in Deep Space Nine, he was in Lower Decks, he was in Picard, and technically he filmed his scene for Picard, at least in season 1, on the bridge of the Discovery. So that's that one ticked off as well. And that's before we even mention his directing backlog. However, when he made his special appearance in Voyager's Death Wish, this was in the show's second season. So having another Star Trek character, indeed having another Starfleet character, appear on the show when the ship was still 70,000 light years away from Earth was both confusing, exciting, and shocking. Yes, I said both. The cold open did serve to soften some of that shock with the arrival of Garrett Graham's Quinn. He identifies himself as Q on that transporter pad, so seasoned Trekkies will be going, there's some Q trickery going on, especially again with the inclusion of John Delancey's name in the credits as well. The thing that still confuses me all these years on, this episode is set in 2372, yet Riker appears in his Next Generation uniform and comm badge. So if he's still sporting the Next Generation era comm badge, that would mean that this should be before the events of Star Trek Generations or Deep Space Nine's Defiant. However, what's more likely is that audiences just recognized him best in his TNG gear, so just don't rock the boat and leave him there. Number 9. Denise Crosby, All Good Things. For the finale of The Next Generation, audiences were treated to several returning faces. We had Colm Meaney donning his spandex red onesie again, playing Miles O'Brien as he appeared in Encounter at Farpoint. John Delancey returned in his judge's garbs to make sure humanity knew it was still on trial, but one of the sweeter cameos came from the return of Denise Crosby, who was playing, to date, Tasha Yar for the last time. Though Crosby had appeared, of course, in yesterday's Enterprise, Redemption, and Unification, this was her return to the Prime timeline version of Tasha Yar. Obviously, there's a bit of cute, timey-wimey trickery going on, but for all intents and purposes, this is the Tasha that we saw in Season 1. There is a moment not long after the opening credits finish in which Picard, in the future at this point, turns around and finds himself on the shuttlecraft on the way to the Enterprise, which is being piloted by none other than Tasha herself. This was a moment in the script that was clearly meant to surprise fans and bring smiles to our faces. That was technically spoiled by having her name in the opening credits. And also, not only that, but it was specifically spelled out that she would be playing Tasha Yar. You could have said that Denise Crosby was guest starring and have people wondering, is it going to be Sela? Who knows? But no, Tasha Yar. Still, this is a minor quibble, as having Yar, O'Brien, and Q all return in the finale helps to make All Good Things one of, if not the, best end of a show run in Star Trek's history. Number 8. Michael Dorn, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. The sixth film of the Star Trek film franchise was conceived as a celebration and an ending. The critical failure of The Final Frontier was the well, the denouement that nobody wanted for Kirk and the original series crew. So this one was designed to rectify that while also bringing attention to the then ongoing series of The Next Generation. It's a film that does feature cameos both in terms of people and sets. The famous opening credits to the film feature that bombastic overture by composer Cliff Idleman and some pretty heavy-hitting names. We had Iman, we had Brock Peters, we had Christopher Plummer, we had Michael Dorn, we had... wait, what? The film was produced during The Next Generation's 4th and 5th seasons, so at this stage audiences knew who Worf was. That led to a lot of raised eyebrows as his name was there in the opening credits. How does that work in terms of timelines? Technically, we know that Klingons live longer than humans. Perhaps this is Worf, and he was around during Kirk's time. We don't know. We then found out. As Kirk and McCoy stand trial, we see Michael Dorn playing not our Worf, but his own grandfather, Colonel Worf, who is one of the most useless defense lawyers I think I've ever seen on screen. This was a case where having the name in the credits actually helps build up the excitement for this cameo, and the payoff works quite well, I think. It's a very small role. For over 100 years, Worf has been acting as a pretty decent head of security, if, as I say, not a great lawyer. Number 7, LeVar Burton, timeless. For the 100th episode of Star Trek Voyager, the producers decided that they would celebrate in a couple of ways. First, was that they would bring over Geordi LaForge, a fan favourite from The Next Generation and the ongoing Next Generation films, onto Star Trek Voyager. The second celebration was destroying the ship itself, but as they seem to do that every second Thursday, that one wasn't quite as special. LeVar Burton had, at that point, not appeared as Geordi outside of his series and the films. Here he appears as Captain Geordi LaForge of the USS Challenger, wearing those gorgeous First Contact era uniforms and the even more gorgeous All Good Thing era comm badge. Though this LaForge was from a different timeline, LeVar played him as our Geordi, and we loved him even more for it. With his name in the opening credits, this again serves to build the excitement to a scene that it's short, it's a little cameo, but it really works because it's so well acted and, naturally, so well directed by the man himself. Now, if any of this comes across as a simple love letter to LeVar Burton, I simply answer, yeah, what of it? Number 6, Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh, past prologue. The Duras sisters were the occasional bane of Captain Picard, Worf, and quite frankly anyone who fancied a bit of peace and quiet. Taking after their father and brother, they sought to rule the Klingon Empire, and what's a bit of Romulan interference between friends, eh? Their appearance on Deep Space Nine came after the events of Redemption, so this was very much at a time when they were outcasts in the Empire. They turned up on the station attempting to sell illicit weaponry to the Con Ma, a terrorist sect of Bajorans who even fellow Bajorans tended to avoid. This was part of another bid to take over the Empire, and frankly, it goes about as well as you'd expect. Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh both appear in the credits after Andrew Robinson, who makes his first appearance in this episode as Garak. This is less a spoiler and more a curio, because they don't really get much to do in this episode. They do get more to do in the episode Firstborn of The Next Generation, which would follow this, and of course they get quite a lot to do until the moment where they suddenly stop doing anything in Star Trek Generations. Number 5, Jeri Ryan, absolute candor. The first trailer for the first season of Star Trek Picard had a couple of big reveals. Pretty sexy Borg cube for anyone who was looking at it. One of the most amazing reveals was Jeri Ryan returning as 7 of 9, asking Picard what the hell he was doing out here trying to save the galaxy. I remember sitting in a cafe in Rome, of all places, and I actually let a little cheer out of me when I saw that. So surely her appearance in the season was going to get the same reaction the moment I see her, right? Well, yes and no. The opening credits for the episode Absolute Candor list Jeri Ryan as a special guest star. Brilliant, I thought. Here we go, we're going to get a load of her in this episode. It's going to be great. We're going to see her interacting with the other characters. We're going to see her and Picard talking. It's going to be, we're getting toward the end of this episode now. Act 1 comes and goes, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. There's rather a lot of 7-less minutes here. I caught myself thinking, was it a mistake? You know, was she actually not going to appear until the next episode and they were just giving us a week to get ready? And then of course you go, wait, what was that? Rewind. Oh, that was 7. There she was, right at the very end of the episode. She beams onto La Sirena and says to Picard, "You owe me a ship," and then collapses. Think how much better that would have landed if her name hadn't been in the opening credits and they saved it and then cut to black, special guest star Jerry Ryan. Alternate universe, that happened, everyone's happy. Listen, it was brief, it was beautiful, it was great to see her. Number 4, Tim Russ, Through the Looking Glass. A fun way of having characters cross over between different shows is remove the stakes entirely. In the earlier entry on Riker, he was told that he's not going to be able to retain any of the memories of arriving on Voyager, so boom, writers can do whatever they want with him, everybody's happy. Something similar happens here. The episode Mirror Mirror introduced the Terran universe into Star Trek back in the original series. The Next Generation would never visit this universe, but it would return in Deep Space Nine's crossover, and again here in Through the Looking Glass. This episode sees Prime Sisko captured by Smiley O'Brien and forcibly brought over into the Terran universe. He is there to help in either capturing Jennifer Sisko or killing Jennifer Sisko so that she won't help the Cardassian Klingon Bajoran alliance. There's a lot of fun. We see a gruff and grumpy Bashir. We see Rom hell-bent on getting revenge for the death of his brother, and the less said about what happens with Dax, the better. Scanning through the room, we go, "Oh, hello there, Tuvok. You're looking well," who in this universe never darkened the Delta Quadrant's doorstep. This wasn't Tim Russ's first appearance in Deep Space Nine, but it was the first appearance of Tuvok outside of Voyager, and would remain the only time Tuvok was seen outside of Voyager right up until Star Trek Picard's 3rd season. Also, fun fact, it's the only time we see one of the main cast members of Star Trek Voyager appear in the Mirror Universe. It was a nice surprise, slightly mitigated by the fact that he was there in the opening credits, but to be honest, it was fun enough that it sort of makes up for that spoiler. Number 3, Alice Krige, Endgame. Alice Krige's appearance in Endgame constitutes a case of, we got there in the end, but I don't want that to sound like, oh great, we finally got Alice, we can forget about Susanna. It's not that at all. There's a bit of a funny story as to how this came to pass. When Star Trek First Contact was going into production, Susanna Thompson actually lost out on the role of the Borg Queen to Alice Krige. Then, when the Borg Queen was being brought over onto Voyager, Alice Krige wasn't available to reprise the role, and so Susanna Thompson played her in Dark Frontier and Unimatrix Zero. This did not come without consequences, because apparently the lenses she had to wear to be the Borg Queen were among the most uncomfortable things she's ever had to do in her life. When it came to the time of Endgame, Susanna Thompson wasn't available to film, and so the producers reached out to and secured Alice Krige. When her name appears in the opening credits, it was a surprise. I mean, we were used to Susanna Thompson at this point, so having Krige play the role certainly changes the dynamics. Susanna Thompson's Borg Queen was much more of a cold scientist, whereas Alice Kriege's Borg Queen was more of a sultry seductress. With Krige reprising the role of the Borg Queen in Star Trek Voyager, this would be the first time that the Queen was played by multiple performers on one show, with Picard then following that trend, if you like, with Annie Wershing playing the Borg Queen in Season 2, and Jane Seymour and Alice Krige again playing the role in Season 3. Number 2, Michael Dorn, The Way of the Warrior. Michael Dorn returns to this list for something that was less of a surprising appearance, and more of a surprising placement in the opening intro. By the time that The Way of the Warrior was announced, audiences knew that Michael Dorn was going to be joining Deep Space Nine for Season 4 at the very least. The Next Generation had come to an end, and the Enterprise D had just been destroyed, or seemingly destroyed, over Viridian 3. This left Worf without a home. The cold open of the episode shows a changeling hunt through the station, Sisko and Cassidy attempting to have dinner together, and the sudden arrival of the Klingon fleet commanded by General Martok. Quite frankly, there was a lot going on as we cut to that lovely comet passing through the sky. The intro was then changed to reflect the changes in the show. We see Captain Sisko, we see Rene Auberjonois, we then see Michael Dorn, whose name comes before Terry Farrell's in the credits. What on earth is going on? I remember thinking that. There's no great mystery as to it. D comes before F in the alphabet, and that's how the credits were done. I also remember thinking, oh, they've changed it up. And now, think about it today, it seems a deliberate change to let audiences know that there were going to be things changing in the Bajoran sector, whether you liked it or not. And speaking for myself then, and speaking for myself now, I liked it. a lot. Worf's name was there in the credits before he ever appeared on screen in Deep Space Nine, and sure as he would kick Drex's ass, he was here to stay. Number 1. George Takei, Grace Lee Whitney, Michael and Sarah, flashback. For Star Trek's 30th birthday, the then ongoing shows DS9 and Voyager decided to celebrate this milestone. Deep Space Nine sent its main cast back in time via the Orb of MacGuffin to take part in the events of The Trouble with Tribbles. It's a great episode. I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't seen it already. Star Trek Voyager went in a different direction. Tuvok suffers a parasitic infection that sends his memory into a tizzy. Janeway tries to help by joining him in a mind meld and suddenly finds herself on the bridge of the Excelsior, of all places. This occurs right around the time of the Battle of Kittimer. Star Trek legends Michael and Sarah, Grace Lee Whitney, and none other than George Takei all return to play their characters, donning the Klingon headridges or monster maroons where appropriate. This was an episode designed for one thing alone, and that's nostalgia. And in that respect, it succeeded wildly. Also, there had been a marketing campaign. This wasn't something that they knew they were going to be able to keep secret. So when the opening credits rolling and you see Takei, Grace Lee Whitney and Michael and Sarah's names there, odds are a lot of the audience already knew they were going to be in the episode. In that respect, it seems like it would have been quite difficult to try and hide the surprise. But if losing the element of surprise was the cost of getting Sulu, Rand and Kang back on screen, totally worth it. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much. Can you think of any other examples where the surprise was spoiled by the credits? Let us know in the comments below. I have been Sean Ferrick. You can follow me on the various socials. Make sure that you're following TrekCulture on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on TikTok, TrekCulture YT on Instagram. Yous are awesome, yous are wonderful. Until I see yous again, live long and prosper, and surprising or no, can't wait to see you soon. Thanks very much.